Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, we've got some bad news for Wi-Fi lovers as the KRACK hack takes the world by storm. We've got the latest details and some places to watch to make sure you get all the latest patches. Then we've got some distressing news about third-party access to your personal information through some U.S. mobile carriers, the latest debate over HAMR, MAMR, what those means, and the future of hard drive storage technology, and a mini deep dive into elliptic curve cryptography. Plus, we've got your feedback, a rapid roundup, and so much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Welcome to TechSNAP, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly systems, network, and administration podcast. This is episode 341 for October 17th, 2017. This episode is brought to you by our three excellent sponsors, DigitalOcean, Ting, and iXsystems. My name is Wes, and joining us this week is our BSD bestie. It's Dan. Welcome to the show, Dan.
I'm here. Hello, everybody.
Wonderful to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. Just
Excellent.
me and Snorty sitting here in the cold.
Oh, look at how cute that is. That's adorable. Where did you get that?
These are all over the office.
That's awesome.
Like big boxes of them.
Huh. That's adorable. All right. Well, now I'm officially jealous. Anything new in your world, or should we just roll right into the show today?
Yes.
Oh.
I had 3 new USB thumb drives arrive yesterday. I found out that my screens won't work over a Thunderbolt 2, so I'm getting a Thunderbolt 3 docking station, and I think that's about it. I have still not dug into the Halloween candy that's sitting just to my left here, and that's about it.
You know what? I admire that self-control, because sometimes you just want a piece of candy. Yeah, see, listen to that.
There's a lot of candy here.
That's a lot of candy. Well, we're getting there. We are getting there. But before we get there, we really have to touch on some of the terrible things that have been happening around the internet this week. And first up is, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's that serious flaw in WPA2 that lets attackers intercept passwords and so much more.
Given Halloween is 2 weeks away, could this be the trick?
Oh, I think it very much could be the trick, yeah.
It could be. So, I have some interesting sort of, not inside information, but information that's sort of going amongst some inner circles. But here, let's start by reading the first paragraph of this article on Ars Technica. Researchers have discovered a serious weakness in the WPA2 protocol, and I'll get back to that. I don't actually think it's in the protocol that allows attackers within range of vulnerable device or access point to intercept passwords, emails, and other data presumed to be encrypted, and in some cases to inject ransomware and or malicious content into a website a client is visiting. Now, this sounds horribly insecure, but you basically what WPA2 allows you to do is to encrypt the traffic between your wireless device and the device that it's talking to, normally an access point or router, or some people refer to it as their modem for their ISP.
Right.
These things are everywhere. Even though you may be using HTTPS or VPN, it still is not great. You're not entirely out of the woods if you're restricting all your traffic to just that. As I said, it can intercept stuff. Now, they say it's a protocol, but I'll get back to that because it's not necessarily the protocol. If you follow the strict protocol and do not add anything in above the protocol, then yeah, you're stuck. But it seems that that's what most people have done, is just follow the protocol. The attack works by forcing the device into reinstalling an all-zero encryption key rather than the real key. Now that sounds bad, but it's actually part of the protocol. This ability, which also works on Linux, I don't know why they say that. Also works on Linux. It's a wireless protocol. Makes the attack particularly effective on these platforms. And the site went on that visiting HTTPS only wasn't automatically a remedy because many improperly configured HTTPS sites can be dropped into HTTP. But that's a separate issue. So this vuln is called KRACK, and it works by targeting the four-way handshake. I didn't know it was a four-way handshake. That's executed when a client joins a WPA2 protected Wi-Fi network. So that WPA2 is supposed to allow you to set up the encryption so that you can't just sit there and listen to what's going back. You might be familiar with WEP, which is a previous, well, it's another protocol, not so nicely.
Yeah, not so nice.
Not so nicely protected. It's not as nicely regarded.
Right, that's kind of WEP kind of gave rise to that the whole war driving scene and being able to easily crack your neighbor's password, get on their Wi-Fi. Those were the days.
Among other things, the handshake helps to confirm that both the client and the access points have the correct credentials. KRACK tricks the vulnerable client into reinstalling an already in use key. The reinstallation forces the client to reset packet numbers containing a cryptographic nonce, now there's a great word, and other parameters to their initial values. KRACK forces the nonce, there it is again, reuse in such a way that it allows the encryption to be bypassed. Now, you should look up what a nonce is. It's very cool. Now, I'm going to finish reading this article or reading the highlights from this article, and then go on to the next one, which goes into much greater detail. The vulnerability is likely to pose the biggest threat to large corporate and government Wi-Fi networks, particularly if they accept connections from Linux and Android devices. I think they're being too narrow there.
Yeah, I agree.
This affects just about everything. So now I want to go over to the Forbes article, which, not surprisingly, or perhaps surprisingly, actually has much better information. It did come out only yesterday, whereas the previous article came out on the day this was announced, they both came out on the 16th. My apologies. It's time to get patching again. Another widespread vulnerability affecting practically everyone that uses Wi-Fi was revealed on Monday. Blah, 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 blah. And then later, more specifically, the KRACK attack sees a hacker trick a victim into reinstalling an already in-use key. Every key should be unique and not reusable, but a flaw in WA2 means that a hacker can tweak and replay the handshakes carried out between Wi-Fi routers and devices connecting to them. During those handshakes, encryption keys made up of algorithmically generated one-time use random numbers are created. It turns out that in WPA2, it's possible for an attacker to manipulate the handshakes so that keys can be reused and messages silently intercepted. In the releases from that you've seen over the past couple of days, Wes, did you notice any products that were not vulnerable?
That's a good question. Not off the top of my head, though. I have not been building a list. I'm curious.
I know that one product that I don't want to mention was not vulnerable because they implemented WPA2 with a couple of extra checks, one of which was not to reuse keys.
I see.
They just won't reuse keys.
They just won't reuse keys. Okay. Well, that's pretty... That seems sensible, and wow, paying off.
So that product did not release.
Did not have an update. Right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
As for how widespread the issue was, it appears that almost any device that uses Wi-Fi is affected. Now, this is both a client and a server thing, is it? No, it is the client as well. Yeah, because there's nothing. Yeah. The weakness is in the Wi-Fi standard itself and not in particular products or implementations. And my previous statement disagrees with the statement I just read. It is in the Wi-Fi standard, but you don't have to, some products have implemented more. Therefore, any correct implementation of WPA2 is likely affected. Well, to prevent the attack, users must update affected products as soon as security updates become available. Basically, if your device supports Wi-Fi, it's most likely affected. There's some good news. Guess what the good news is?
Ooh.
It's not truly a remote attack.
Excellent.
In the most likely attack scenario, the hacker would need to have direct connect to the Wi-Fi access point. In other words, they're going to be sitting in the same cafe or outside your house. Did you upgrade anything yesterday with respect to this?
Yeah, I've upgraded some things. I've had some friends and coworkers who've had updates that they've had go around. It seems like it's been done reasonably well. I saw Microsoft had some updates. You know, a lot of big name vendors have updates prepared, which is good.
I'll leave it to the listeners to figure out who isn't issuing updates.
Yeah, it's a little puzzle. I like that.
Those are the ones that did it right.
Yep, right.
Or went above and beyond. Not necessarily did it right, but went above and beyond to avoid this situation. Somehow the person that was coding it realized, oh, this is a bad idea. Let's not let them do that.
Yeah, just good software engineering practices, I suppose.
This attack doesn't scale, says this chap. You have to be within physical proximity to the device. It's a very targeted attack. Not like we're all going to be hit, as attackers can only be in so many Wi-Fi zones at once. So it's not going to be someone sitting in their basement attacking everyone everywhere. They've got to get out and get mobile. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, I upgraded my Ubiquity devices yesterday morning. That went rather well. It's always sort of hard on me to remember how to do that because I don't upgrade them manually very often.
Right.
But they did upgrade rather quickly.
Excellent.
But yeah, some people are going to have trouble updating this. I'm sure that there's some devices sitting in homes that will never ever get updated, because I've installed Ubiquity WAPs in the homes of two friends, and I know they're never going to hear about this.
Right.
But
are you going to tell them?
Yeah, I'm going to tell them. Three friends.
Nice.
Three locations.
So if you buy me a beer, I can reveal a security flaw in your home network.
Ooh.
No, wait. No, that's not ethical.
Well, no. Hold on here. How about you buy me dinner or cook me dinner and Well, we'll see.
You might include a couple extra things. All right, I'll upgrade your router and fix one other thing.
Yep.
But I'm getting the steak.
No, it'll probably just be spaghetti.
Yeah, well, that sounds good.
I don't think it'll be a steak. Spaghetti, maybe.
That's fair.
All right, so now I had another note over here. Just let me switch. Oops, sorry, microphone there. Where'd it go? There it is.
Stand by, audience. Dan will destroy his studio, but we'll carry on.
Scrolling. So, lots of stuff got updated yesterday. Releases came out. Lots of stuff did not. And so this is where it pays to know what you have in use, what you're using around the office and at home, and monitor your suppliers for updates, whether that's through their blog posts or whatever. But just watch. Using a VPN and HTTPS will help. It reduces the attack surface, but it's not perfect. We got to get WPA2 fixed.
Yeah, exactly. It's done us reasonably well over the years. So it's a pretty big find. It seems like it's been communicated with somewhat less hyperbole, at least so far, that I've seen. I mean, like, there's obviously been some bigger news stories and other things, but it feels like it's been less over-exaggerated. It's kind of hit right on at least a reasonable amount of, like, yes, this is dangerous, and then you should update, but not like, the world is ending, all of Wi-Fi forever destroyed.
Did you notice that someone who we won't name issued updates a couple of weeks ago that fixed this?
Ooh, I did not notice that.
Okay, so we won't name who it is. Tie that in with what we covered last week or the week before on binary diffs.
Right. there's some things to be found in there.
So they released ahead of time. Anyone doing a binary diff might be able to detect this issue. So there
you go. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll have more fallout on future shows from KRACK, but hopefully that's enough to get people started. Go look for updates. Make sure that the systems that you can update and have updates get their patches. Anything else you want to add there, Mr. Dan?
Yeah. Pay attention to this one because you are going to want to patch it, especially if you're on Wi-Fi.
Yeah, and especially if you're in an area where you have reasonable threat vectors, or you just have a lot of people around you, or especially home offices, etc. So, get your patches. Okay, well, with that, you may now again be thinking, hey, it's really time that I run my own VPN, but I'm gonna need a server for that. You will, but thankfully, I have the solution ready and prepared for you. It's DigitalOcean.com. Head on over to DigitalOcean.com. We've got an extra special promo code there, SNAPOcean, all lowercase, one word. That'll get you started with a $10 credit. What can you get with this incredible credit? Oh, my friends, you can get some of the best cloud VPSs, they call them droplets, that money can buy. It's cloud computing designed for developers. What do they mean by that over at DigitalOcean? What they mean is it's simple, you have full control, and it just works. They were some of the first to adopt SSDs. They've got all SSDs, and they've got incredible transit, great peering, 40 gigabit E right to the KVM hypervisor. Yeah, this is real hypervisors. It's not a container. It's not some OpenVZ hybrid thing. It's KVM, so you can, your OS will work. You get full virtualization. It's great. Plus, they've got a ton of other cloud features you've come to expect. Things like load balancers, monitoring, like all kinds of stuff. It's awesome. They're adding stuff all the time. Attachable block storage. They now have object storage. Go get in, try object storage. Super reasonable rates, really easy, and it goes above and beyond. Maybe you've used other object storage services where like, all right, well, I set up an API and I get my token and there's a whole bunch of JSON that it gets exchanged in both ways. Yeah, you can do that with DigitalOcean. They're compatible with a number of standard API formats, but also they've just got a simple, intuitive HTML5 dashboard. You can just drag stuff, put it in your spaces super simply. You can make it public or private, and if you make it private, they have an inbuilt functionality to make easy, time-release, shareable URLs that just get destroyed after a certain amount of time. So it makes it super simple if you just want to do a couple transfers or secure transfers, maybe for your business or for clients or sharing details with friends or family. Super simple for that. Easy to use. It's great. Just one more feature that DigitalOcean has that sets them above and beyond the rest. And that dashboard, it's so simple. It's so easy. It's easily the best. It's all built on their API. So the API is super capable. It's way more friendly to use than a lot of their competitors. It all just shows that DigitalOcean has a different tack. They're not trying to, be the giant enterprise player. They're trying to cater to people like you and I who just want to work on our projects or want to start a startup and don't need 1,000 layers of certifications and convoluted requirements and enterprise level agreements. You just want to get some servers set up around the world in Amsterdam or New York or Toronto. I mean, they have data centers all over the place. They're incredible. Go follow their social media. You'll see what I mean. And go check out the community. Use our promo code SNAPOcean. That gets you a $10 credit. Go check out the community section because you will find a whole bunch of world-class documentation. It's made from contributors, and then they have hired real top-notch editors to turn it into some of the best documentation on the internet. So whether you want to set up a WordPress server, an OpenVPN server, or anything in between, go try DigitalOcean.com and use our promo code SNAPOcean. Okay, so with that out of the way, time to jump on to some more crazy news this week. This time, it might just be in your pocket.
It's icky. It's very icky.
Yeah.
It's icky. We've been concerned, and we've talked about it on the show, about mobile carriers sort of doing stuff that's not very nice. Yeah. They've got this concept of having context-sensitive ads. So if you're walking across from Shop X, you might see ads for Shop X on your phone and stuff like that. Well, this is even more interesting. And we're going to start off with the blog post by Philip N., who talks about this crazy website that you could go to. So you go to this website in your zip code and click on see underlying data. And Basically, it's your name and location and some more information. Now, these demo sites are now gone, but what's basically happening in here? So his background, what's going on here? In December of 2013, AT&T announced their Mobile Identity API. Sounds bad. Available only through an enterprise contract with AT&T.
Naturally.
So you and I can't get it.
Well, maybe we should start an enterprise.
But enterprises can.
Yeah, well, of course. That's where the
Verizon later announced something similar. So it looks like both Danel and Payphone are paying for access to these enterprise Delco APIs. The previous two test sites were associated with those companies. These services are using your mobile phone's IP address to look up your phone number, your billing information, and possibly your phone's current location is provided by cell phone towers. No GPS or phone location services required. These services are doing this with the assistance of the telco providers. So why? Why might they be doing this? Well, let's read on. These services claim to help detect fraud by cross-referencing user-provided billing or phone number information with the cell phone provider's information. Okay. You can go away.
My web search terms.
Trying to be so helpful over there.
I don't know what I said there for her. Okay. Did you know that she won't answer if it's face down? It's now face down.
Okay, there we go. That's a nice intuitive way to quiet
it was only one of two phones, too. While the two demos above require the lookup IP address to be the same as the requesting IP address, such safeguards may not be in place if you purchase contracts from these companies. For example, the Payphone API appears to allow customers to look up cell phone information just by saying the user has consented. Their API also allows batch lookups. In 2003, news came to light that AT&T was providing the DEA and other law enforcement agencies with no court warrant required access to real-time cell phone metadata. This is a pretty big deal at the time. I get a link to that information as well.
Nice.
But what these services, these demos that he's provided links to, which are now no longer active, these services show something even more alarming. U.S. telcos appear to be selling direct, non-anonymized real-time access to consumer telephone data to third-party services, not just federal law enforcement officials who are then selling access to that data. So third parties can access this data through third parties. So given the trivial consent step required by these services and unlikely audit controls, it appears that these services could be used to track or de-anonymize nearly anyone with a cell phone in the United States with potentially no oversight. So the rest of what we're going to go through here is just his follow-up notes. The telco partners removed the demos once this article got some traction. Payphone also made their previously public and linked from their homepage API documentation private. They made the API docs private. The article was updated to point to an archived form of their documentation. AT&T's consumer choice opt-out at so-and-so URL didn't appear to do anything to stop this, even after waiting the stated 48 hours. All of the demos were still working for me in the morning of October 15th after I had opted out on October 13th. Many users on Twitter and elsewhere also report that AT&T's opt-out process doesn't do anything here. Verizon's opt-out pages also may not do anything to prevent this either, and he gives links. Now, interestingly, there is a presentation by Brian Hicks of AT&T and Ritesh Jain of Danal Inc. on YouTube. It's a joint presentation at Saita. The link is in here. After publication of this article, the video was made unavailable. He also found what looks like a third-party API implementation for a Korean API in GitHub. The author wrote the code for South Korean telcos, so there may be differences with US carriers. The query parameters in the HTTP requests are similar to what I remember seeing in the demo. It's unclear from my reading of the code whether or not this API requires operation inside of a hosted iframe for identity confirmation. But the diagram on page 4 of this documentation describes the Korean service. Describing the Korean service appears to show the client interacting with the customer's servers only. Now, apparently, credit should go to Paul Lanzi for showing Philip N. this demo. So Paul Lansley is a cybersecurity startup. Is at a cybersecurity startup. This is pretty cool. And naughty. I wonder who this falls under. I wonder what. If only we had a privacy czar.
Yeah, wouldn't that be handy?
That would be handy right now.
Yeah, and
why are you selling my information?
Mm-hmm. Maybe I want to have an opportunity to consent to those sorts of things.
Yep. I go back to the New Zealand privacy
rights
laws, which were created in the 80s or 90s, if I recall correctly. It might have been the late 80s. Information can only be used for the purposes for which it was gathered.
There we go. That seems so reasonable.
It does,
common
doesn't
sense.
it? Unreasonably reasonable.
Unreasonably reasonable. Yeah, exactly. That's why we can't have nice things, Dan.
Exactly. So I don't see T-Mobile or anyone else we know listed here.
No. I don't either. I mean, maybe viewers are now kind of concerned for their privacy and the implications of those agreements they may have, and are possibly looking for an alternative. If so, we have a suggestion, and that's one of our dear sponsors, our friends over at Ting. Head on over to techsnap.ting.com and you'll find a smarter way to do mobile. It's smarter in like a huge number of ways, but one of those ways is Ting it's not in the business of trying to sell your information or trying to become the next giant media conglomerate or try to force a bunch of apps down your throat. Those are just not Ting's goals. Ting's goal is to be an awesome mobile service provider that has a super intuitive, easy to use dashboard, that has pricing that makes sense for today's world and doesn't lock you in, and that keeps things friendly with real humans available to help you. When you go to techsnap.ting.com and sign up for an account, you'll get a $25 credit. Okay, $25. Now you're like, okay, that sounds pretty great. What can I get with that? Well, you can get just the best darn cell phone plan you've ever had, if this makes sense for you. Have you ever imagined, this whole like contract thing where I sign up for a 2-year contract and I have to estimate how much I'm going to use for that period, and I only get so much here, and maybe I get unlimited minutes, but I don't really use minutes, and I really just want to spend less money. If that sounds like you, then Ting is perfect, because Ting is pay for what you use. Each line is $6 each. That's just $6. That covers, all the activation, that sort of thing, gets you started. And that's per device. So if you have 3 devices, $6 each. If you don't use that phone at all, that's all you'll pay for the month. It's pretty great. Right now they've got a for the next 5 days or so, they've got a deal. If you add an additional line, you get a bonus 2 gigs of data. So go check that out if you're watching this before October 22nd. Might just be for you. After that $6, you just pay for what you use. So let's say you don't use any minutes and you don't use any text messages. Well, that's like me. Maybe you use a couple, maybe you just occasionally people send you text messages, you make a couple calls, you order some food out, and you don't have Wi-Fi call-in or similar, then maybe that's what happens. That's all right. And then you use a little bit of data. Maybe you just use like 500 megs because you're on Wi-Fi most of the time. Your monthly bill, $22 a month. So that $25 service credit, that's going to get you started and probably pay for more than your first month's bill. And if you use more than those, that's fine too. You can go. It's really easy to estimate what you'll save by using Ting. They'll make it super simple over at their rates page. And you get all the things that you want: 3-way calling, tethering, and so tethering is great on Ting because it's pay for what you use. So you don't have to worry that you're going to go over some magical cap or have to pay an extra amount and get a separate weird magic tethering data bucket. No, that's nonsense. That doesn't make sense. That's not simple. Ting is mobile that makes sense. So why would they do that? They don't. Just use the data you want, pay for the data you use. End of story. if you need a new device too, you can use that service credit on one of their many fine phones. They've got all the largest and latest retailers over in the Ting shop. When my internet loads correctly there. All right, well, that's just not working. Let's go back to Ting's wonderful rates page. Regardless, you can go to the Ting shop, find some devices, use that service credit there. They've got like the Samsung S8. They've got all the latest iPhone devices. They all work. Ting resells CDMA and GSM networks. So if one of those is better in your area, you can use that. That's how Ting keeps things so simple. Go check it out. Go pick up a Ting SIM, put it in a device, put it in a laptop, use it as an extra internet gateway, use it in a backup cell phone in your car. There's just so many options. You won't regret trying out Ting. Head on over to techsnap.ting.com. Okay, so here we're taking a break from some of the bad, terrible, no good security and privacy things in the world to just talk about some technology. And you know what? That's kind of nice for once in a while over here on the TechSNAP program.
Yes. This is what we all like. New toys.
Shiny.
Now, what we're talking about here is this article reads like a press release, and people listening to it will sound like we're just piping on what Western Digital is saying, and that if it was someone else saying the same thing, we would be talking about it just the same. So we're not being specific here. It just so happens that it's Western Digital that's announcing this. So recently, there's been a lot of talk about HAMR, I guess is what you call it. But basically what you do is you heat up the disk before you write to it, and it gives you more capacity. But there's some problems with that approach. But what Western Digital has started doing is instead of using a laser to heat it up, they're using a microwave. Not a microwave like sitting on your kitchen counter, but yesterday, Western Digital announced a breakthrough in microwave-assisted magnetic recording, MAMR, M-A-M-R, that completely took the storage industry by surprise. Say what? The takeaway was that Western Digital would be using MAMR instead of HAMR for driving up hard drive capacities over the next decade. Before going into the specifics, it is beneficial to have some background on the motivation behind MAMR.
Okay.
Well, I found that their specifics wasn't all that great. So then I leapt way over to the Extreme Tech link, where they actually talk about why they're using this, why they've changed it. So they say, if MAMR works out, it would most likely replace HAMR. Pardon me. With HAMR, heat-assisted magnetic recording, a laser is used to heat the media and make it easier to write. So the end result is similar to MAMR, which uses microwave to achieve the same thing. However, repeatedly heating the hard drive platter to several hundred degrees, that's a lot, would cause a reduction in longevity. The head design would also be completely different than current hard drives, which adds to the manufacturing complications. MAMR doesn't heat the recording medium at all, and the technology to make it work is invisible to the host machine. Not only would HAMR require completely new manufacturing techniques, but servers would also need driver software to manage wear leveling caused by the rapid and repeated heating. Western Digital claims that MAMR drives should easily match the lifespan of current drives. So there's this diagram here that they talk about where the complexity of MAMR, it leverages concurrent technology. The reliability is similar to current technology, which they're referring to as PMR. It's plug and play. They should be under production in 2019.
Oh, that's which is pretty soon here.
Which is theoretically only less than 15 months away. And the cost approaches PMR.
Wow, okay.
Whereas the heat one, new materials and supply chain changes, heat dramatically degrades reliability. Now, remember that we're getting this from people who are pumping up the MAMR. The manufacturability is unknown, cost and reliability challenges, and they say it's significantly higher than PMR. So if we believe all the hype that Western Digital is putting out there, and they may be telling the absolute truth, but this is a PR release. This sounds interesting because they're talking about the the possibility of 40 terabyte enterprise hard drives. 40 terabyte. Right now, what's our biggest?
It's like 12,
spinning
maybe
disk?
16.
12?
I'm not sure on the latest one, but it's it's certainly not 40.
Enterprise hard drives, 40 terabytes. So the first such hard drives should hit around 2019, 2020. Now,
all right, it looks like 16s are coming on the marketplace anywhere or something like that. But sorry, go on.
So what they've got is the writer has this innovative spin torque oscillator, which delivers energy assist and path for areal density. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong.
You're doing a good job, though.
They can do 4 terabytes a square inch.
Wow.
That's astounding.
That's impressive, yeah.
4 terabytes a square inch. The device used to generate a microwave field that increases its reliability, its ability to reliably record data at ultra high density, enables Western Digital to create hard drives that can hold over 40 terabytes worth of data. Such hard drives are expected to be available to consumers by 2025. That's a long way away. That's 8 years.
That is a long way away.
Although WD will begin providing them to data centers as soon as 2019. Why do we have to wait 6 years? Probably for the cost to drop, I would imagine.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
But
to make it reasonable that these things will be, proofed, battle tested, ready for consumer use.
Now, I was reading another article. It might have been the first one that we linked to, where they were saying that SSDs and HDDs. SSDs are probably going to take over for consumers, but HDDs won't because of the cost per gigabyte, which is just dramatically dropping.
Like right.
The amount of storage that $1 gets you now is just flying.
Definitely nice for people who want to protect their backups.
To put it in perspective, one of these hard drives would replace about 8 of mine over here.
I just helped my parents recycle an old machine that had a 20 gigabyte hard drive on it. So that was pretty good. Couple order of magnitudes involved here.
I have a couple of old SCSI drives sitting around just for test purposes, which I think are less than a gig.
Wow.
I'm sure they're less than a gig.
It's wild, though, to think. And it's not like it's been that long. Sure, it's been some time, decades involved, but really not that long. And it's wildly transformed the way that you can, use things that you can store, how reliably you can do that.
I remember having no, that's not a good thing to hold up. I remember having a printed circuit board about that big, and it held, I think, 4K of RAM, of 2102 RAM chips. And I remember soldering all that. And I remember I had 2 of them. They went into a MMIC 8080 or Z80 system. Wasn't even on the same, it was a separate board for the RAM.
Okay, but, yeah, interesting.
But yeah, and there's no external storage. The external storage was a paper tape.
Yeah, right, yeah, exactly. Boy, how times fly. Well, are you excited for these new hard drive improvements?
I am, but for redundancy, I'm going to need 4 of them.
Right.
What that level? Gives me... that gives me like 80 terabytes of data on 2 drives. I want to know what the power consumption is going to be and what the reliability is going to be like. I am excited that we can get more disk space out of the same form factor.
Right. Would you would any of these changes lead to you no longer using tapes in the future?
No.
Yeah.
I'll probably still use tape.
That's what
I can't see me stopping tape anytime soon.
It's just instinctive at this point. You get up in the morning, you go over to check the tapes. It just happens by nature.
It used to. It doesn't anymore. Only once a month.
Only once a month. Well, that's reasonable. Well, awesome. All right. Anything else you want to say about HAMR, MAMR, and the future of hard drive technology?
Someone posted, some other drive manufacturer is going to say, hey, wait, we've got even bigger drives coming. So we'll have to wait and see.
I'm sure there'll be more developments here.
I am looking forward to it. Competition is good.
Mm-hmm. And if anyone in the audience has any opinions or has recently acquired some large drives of their own and have experience reports, I would certainly be interested in hearing about it. And if you are just confused about this future market of different drive technologies and would like a helping hand in your next storage purchase, I can think of only one company that fits the bill. That is our friends over at iXsystems. Head on over to iXsystems.com/TechSNAP. There, you will find the definitive guide to buying hardware for open source software and proprietary software, and really for anything you need to do, just at all. iXsystems has a team of incredible sales engineers and just a whole staff of competent, experienced, knowledgeable people who are excited and standing by to help you make whatever your next project, business, or just goal a complete success. They are experts in this field. They've built incredible systems. Go to their homepage, go to their social media, take a look. I mean, the things you'll see, you'll really see that they have partners. People like Splunk, LinkedIn, various government agencies, universities. They help NASA and Berkeley do with research for storage for research projects. Adobe, VMware, they're used all over. They're widely recognized. Part of that is some of the great work they do, things open source work like FreeNAS. Maybe you've heard about the awesome FreeNAS project. You can run it at home, turn your own software or your own hardware into a NAS. Or if you love FreeNAS and you want to get just the best FreeNAS you can get it right from iXsystems. Go on over. You can get it on Amazon. You can buy it right from iX on their website or call them up. FreeNAS Mini is perfect for home office, anywhere you just need to make sure you have backups. You want a powerful single server or a couple servers, that have easy hot swappable storage, that have great warranties. You know that iX, they've been doing this so long. They're experts at this. The FreeNAS Mini, the form factor is great. They've really spent a lot of time in engineering and design, making this thing easy to use, easy to maintain, super simple. It's super redundant. FreeNAS runs from a USB drive, but the settings are stored on the array. So if that USB drive ever dies or you need to do updates, you can just switch it out with a new one or reflash it. It's so well thought out. Maybe you need something a little bigger. Go check out the TrueNAS. Just rack it up in your data center. You got some storage coming right online. Plays so super well with tons of different enterprise technologies. Or maybe you have some true storage needs and you want to check out the TrueRack. Maybe you're, it's time to upgrade the SAN at your data center. Go look at the TrueRack. Go talk to iX. They will have some super cost-effective solutions. And if you look at the work they do upstream with projects like OpenZFS, you can tell they really know their file system and their storage technology. So as all these new types of drives come online, iX is going to be playing with them, burning in them, using them, benchmarking them, throwing in systems, evaluating what the best price is or what might actually work for your use case, not just what's hypey, flashy, or currently on the market, right? They'll understand you have needs. You probably want to make sure you have some of the best processors. They've got a great partnership with the incredible Intel processors, so you're getting the best bang for your buck. You're getting the motherboards that make sense. They've got great relationships with a ton of partners. And don't forget, go check out their blog too, because you'll always see iX over at a ton of different conferences having a lot of fun, and they have these server envy posts. So go check out Ohio Linux Fest 2017 recap. It's a great conference, and iX was there, so go check that out. And go check out this 4U server, the iX4260 from the Jupiter series. It's got a 60 bay drive capacity. It really will provide you, as they say, with more storage than you can imagine, and it's pretty to boot. So look at all those. Look super easy. Systems from iX come burn-in tested, ready to go. They've got white glove service. Your server will show up ready to be racked. You can ship it right to the data center, plugged in, operational. A lot of people set them up so it just pixie boots right up, gets imaged from however you've set that up in your data center. It's super simple. They've done this since the internet existed pretty much, and so they really are experts. Head on over to iXsystems.com/TechSNAP. Go check out their blog, go get some server envy, and let them know you appreciate them sponsoring us here at the TechSNAP program. And now it's time for the feedback. We get feedback from you, our wonderful audience, from time to time, and this is the segment where we take time in the show to Hear that feedback. You can reach us over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact, techsnap.reddit.com, or find us both on Twitter. Now it's time for your letters. What do we got today, Dan?
Well, I have to admit that I've made these ones up. We didn't get any feedback, and I think I know why. It's only been 3 business days since we last released.
You know what? That's a really good point.
The show.
Yeah,
so,
you're right.
Wes, what do you do in your day job?
That's a good question.
You don't have to get specific.
That's a good point. I feel like I have like way too many interests these days. But right now, what I'm doing is I work on an internal tool team as a software developer. We have a number of systems under our scope, but a large part of it is we maintain like the configuration management. So we do a lot of work with the Chef server at work, as well as manage some aspects of like our infrastructure as a service sort of internal platform, which handles like VM provisioning, DNS and IP changes. Let's see, a bunch of other things, manage our internal enterprise GitHub, mostly maintain, build, help fix all the tools, software deployment. There's multiple in-house systems that are being used to deploy, upgrade, and run systems, handle the tools that run our patching infrastructure, all that sort of stuff. So the company's kind of moving from what was a very traditional dev and ops split to somewhat more of a shared DevOps, faster, agile kind of structure. So there's been a lot of changes around how we do things, trying to press for more automation. So I guess you could call me right now like an automation and tools developer.
Okay.
Maybe that answers your question.
What sort of tools did you...
Yeah, so we both basically, like, there's an in-house system that handles we have a bunch of KVM servers and several of our own data centers. So we have some in-house developed software that runs all the orchestration that gets that working, builds VMs, builds all the images that we use as base images that hook into like the LDAP infrastructure, hook into the deployment infrastructure, write all the tools and build pipelines to manage the continuous integration of Chef and that sort of thing.
Yep. I was thinking of other types of tools, more like I was thinking of Poudre, Salt, Ansible, stuff like that. But you mentioned Puppet.
Chef, not Puppet. But we do have Ansible.
They're the same thing, aren't they?
They're very similar. They have a very similar model. Although Chef is a little bit more freeform in that it's a Ruby DSL, and so you can kind of escape into Ruby. Not that you should, but you definitely can. So it's pretty malleable as a system, which is nice.
Okay. Thank you for that question, DTM. Now, the next question comes from DVL. Happens to be me.
Is that right?
Yes, you mentioned this once. Wes, what do you know about elliptic curves and why?
Well, not a huge amount, but I just think that, cryptography is fascinating in general, and math is a lot of fun. And we hear a lot about elliptic curve cryptography and other things. And I recently stumbled across a couple articles that I thought did a really good job of explaining them. So the first one is over here at Wesley Aptekar Castle's blog, and he's got an article, Elliptic Curve Cryptography for Beginners. And as he talks about it, he finds cryptography fascinating and had become interested in elliptic curve cryptography, ECC.
Hold on. ECC. Is that related to ECC RAM?
I do not believe so. Okay. It is a very similar acronym.
Yes.
However, it's not really easy to find an introduction that doesn't assume a lot of math, and I think that's true. So these posts kind of have those. We can walk through them real quick. As we've maybe talked about here on the show, a fundamental building block of most cryptography is a one-way function. A one-way function is a function that is easy to compute, but its inverse is hard to compute. So if you have, given f of x equals y, it's easy to calculate y given x, but it's hard to go the reverse way. And that's how a lot of our modern cryptography and cryptographic systems in general are working. So there's two ways that this is done commonly. One is factorization, so like a factorization of a really large number, and with elliptic curve logarithms. So this post kind of goes on about how elliptic curves can be used to provide a one-way function. So the goal is to find a one-way function. But to do that, you first have to define what's an elliptic curve. So there's another good article over at imperialviolet.org back from 2010, but it's still, I think it's really useful. So here they've got a formula. An elliptic curve is a set of points on a plane which satisfies an equation of the form y squared is equal to x cubed plus ax plus b. So that just has a specific form in terms of x. Here's an example. So they've got a couple examples pre-computed and graphed here. So here's one, y squared equals x cubed minus 3x plus 3. So you find all points x and y on the plane that satisfy that equation, plot those out on a plane, and you get a shape kind of like this. Which for your audience members, go check out this link. It's super useful to see some of the graphs here. But basically, it's a curve on the plane in two-dimensional space. So there's a lot of details here that we don't really need to go on to. But one thing about elliptic curves that's super useful, it's not that just there's a set of points, but with some careful definitions, these points have a structure to them which is sufficient to form a group. Now, a group is a specific mathematical term. In mathematics, a group is a structure consisting of a set of elements, and they're equipped with an operation that combines any two elements to form a third element, and then that they additionally satisfy four conditions. But the most important here is that if you have two elements, you can apply an operation to them, you get a new element that is also in this group. So that's a very important property here. So we explain a little bit more here. Being a group requires four things. That you can add two elements to get a third element, which is also in the group. That's what we just talked about. That this is true for all elements, and that you can kind of reorder things. So if you have a plus b plus c, a plus b first, and then add c, that's the same as doing b plus c first, and then adding a. And then finally, that there's a zero element, so that if you have an element and you have a zero element, and you combine them, you just get back that first element. A plus 0 equals 0. And finally, that for every element, there's a negative of that element. So if you have an element A and you have a negative in another element, negative A, that is equal to 0. Those are the four axioms of a group. Those are the properties they must satisfy. So if you define addition correctly, the set of points on an elliptic curve has that structure. Also, the addition rule for elliptic curves has a really nice graphical definition. So this article kind of has some of those here. So we don't have to go specifically into it, but the addition rule says that to add 2 points, A and B, you draw a line from A to B, and then keep going until you intersect the curve. Then you reflect that over the x-axis, and that point is defined as A plus B. Now, there's some there's some details in here, like what if A and B are the same point? So there's a special rule for doubling a point. You take the tangent to the curve at that point, intersect it with the curve, and then reflect that. So the point is, you don't have to understand exactly, but you can define these operations where, given 2 points, you can then produce another point, programmatically, algorithmically, that's still on this elliptic curve. The zero element,
was looking at.
Oh, go on.
I was looking at the extreme corners of a curve where the slope is 0, and I was wondering about that. But
yeah. So you also need a zero element. As they say, the zero element is a bit of a hack. That's a software way to define it. In the math world, it's just, there's a lot of times you have unintuitive definitions, but that actually just makes sense. So this is kind of an example of that. We won't go through that here, but basically you can define a zero element, and it's called the point at infinity for elliptic curves. And it's a magic element, not really, but which is infinitely far away. You can think of it that way, which means that a vertical line will end up hitting it. It also means that it's directly above every point. So when you add the zero element to a point, you get its reflection, which you then reflect back to the original point. So that's using the zero element, you can then define that last axiom we talked about where you have a negative of an element. Anyway, the real important point here, as we talked about before, is that we have a group. You have a given elliptic curve that you've drawn, and then you have a group. Those set of points is a group, so that applying an operation, here addition, will give you another element on the group. But what does that actually matter, right? What's the point of that? Well, given addition, as you might remember from grade school, you can then define multiplication, because it's just repeated addition, right? Like 3 times a number is just that number plus itself plus itself. So given a curve and a point on that curve, which we'll call the base point and write G, capital G, you can calculate some multiple of that point. But given the resulting point, you can't feasibly work backwards to find out what that multiple was. So that's part of the key here. And let's see, it's actually called Here we go. Okay, so the multiplication points on an elliptic curve. So you can take a point on a curve, multiply it by a scalar, find a new point on that curve, but going the opposite way is known as the elliptic curve discrete logarithm problem, and that is hard to do. And so there we found our one-way function. And they illustrate this a little bit over here. So to see how it might actually be useful, because it's hard to go the reverse way, if you have Alice and Bob, they're standing in a room with lots of people, and they'd like to have a private conversation about some really juicy gossip that they've both stumbled upon. But there's not enough room to talk privately, right? So thankfully, Alice and Bob both know a standard elliptic curve, right, which is just a set of points, or just like a line drawn on a plane that satisfies the elliptic curve equation we saw before. And they know a base point on that curve. So just any point as the base point on that curve. Each think up a random number, and they multiply the base point by that number. So remember that they're multiplying this here, and so that was going to give them another point on this elliptic curve. We'll call Alice's number A and Bob's B, and these are both numbers they picked randomly. Each tell the other, and therefore everyone else, their number times this base point, right? So they have Alice has A times G, and Bob has B times G, and they share those publicly. So Alice knows A, because it's her secret random number, and she knows BG, which is the multiple that Bob did. And same for the reverse, right? So Bob knows B, and which is his private secret number, and then he knows AG, which is the multiplication that Alice did. So then they have these. But what you can then do is Bob has AG, Alice has BG, but they each have the corresponding other number. So they then both have ABG, or really one of them has ABG and the other one has BAG. So by doing one more multiplication, they get the multiplication from the other party, and they multiply it by their secret number. And because of the rules of a group, those numbers are the same. And so in this way, they have now manufactured a shared private key that, because it's hard to go the opposite way in that multiplication, the other parties in the room can't calculate and can't therefore find that same secret. And that's the elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman key agreement.
So what got shared there publicly was AG and BG, not A and G and B and G, but the result of the multiplication of A times G and B times G?
Exactly.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, so that's kind of the basis. You don't need a ton of math. It might be some algebra that you haven't actually seen, but it's pretty easy to understand. There's really not that many axioms to it. There's a lot of introduction. So if you're curious at all about this has been a whirlwind introduction. There's a lot of more complicated math, a lot of finer points, a lot of, just details, as with any subject. But go check out those two links, and maybe it's whet your palate.
But it's quick to compute, I take it.
Yeah, or at least you can come up with schemes. This Imperial Violet article actually has a section here about implementing it in software, and you can find some other various papers and details about how you get these things to work in practice and make it reasonable to compute.
Okay, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
I like this.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's some fun math and some fun curves to draw as well. Awesome. Well, I guess that does it for today's feedback. If there's anything you want us to talk about, or you have gripes, compliments, or really just opinions in general, send them on over to us, jupiterbroadcasting.com/TechSNAP, techsnap.reddit.com, or find us both on Twitter. Thank you very much for your feedback, and make sure to send some for next time. And with that, it's time for the final segment of today's show. That's right. It's the roundup. We're doing the roundup right today, so it's going to be quick, and it's not going to be super long. That's because it's a roundup. So let's jump right in. First up, we head on over to Twitter.
Yeah, this is nasty. So hackers were breaching major banks, and what they would do is they would modify the overdraft limits of credit cards one by one. And within minutes of making that change to that credit card, the card would be used in another country to withdraw money from an ATM. And once you get money out of the ATM, it's gone. It's gone. So in total, at least 40 million,
Whoa.
That's with an M, is suspected to have been stolen. the same minute the first card OD limit was modified, the physical card was used in another country to perform the withdrawal. So all I can think of is that someone was standing in front of the ATM, was in communication with someone, or could do that from in front of the ATM and then use it.
Boy.
Modifying a substantial number of cards required approximately 4 to 6 hours, and at the same time, all of those cards were used abroad. The sophisticated coordination is a strong indicator of organized crime activities. Now, do you remember the last time we were talking about small groups of people doing nasty things like this? They may not know each other. It may not actually be organized crime in the traditional sense of what we think of, say, the mafia or something like that.
Right, with like a top-down structure.
Yeah. This may just be a small group of people involved.
That's a good point.
And by small is relative.
Small is relative, right. But it may not be the same kind of organization that we've come to expect.
It's not the traditional organized crime that we're familiar with.
Interesting. Well, yikes, 40 million is a lot, and that's no good.
It is.
Okay, so moving right along. We're back over on Twitter. Hijack a Subaru's key fob with a $10 RTL SDR. A rolling code is used, which is predictable.
Yeah. Now, I've heard about this before. I've heard like warnings on Facebook. If you see some people standing around, don't use your key fob. But it's highly unlikely that someone's going to do this. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he goes into details of all the parts you need to buy, but I'm sure that I don't think he's given away the code.
Yeah, okay. That's good, at least. But, boy.
Especially since I drive a Subaru.
Yeah, especially that. Yeah, exactly. It does make you wonder, though, right? Like, the more things we get that are convenient, the more security implications there may be if these things aren't looked after carefully.
Mm-hmm. I think he lists the required hardware, and he does have all the software, so I think it would work.
Mm-hmm.
Don't actually steal all the things he says.
Yeah, this is on you if you steal it. It's not his fault, all right? Well, maybe you'll have to take some... see, if you ever get locked out of your Subaru, maybe you can...
Yeah. Well, it affects a number of items. 2006 Subaru Baja, 2005, 2010 Forester, 2004, 2011 Impreza, 2005 to 2010 Legacy, and 2005 to 2010 Outback.
Okay, yeah, that's a
wow.
That's a good number. So if you have any of those, watch out, or at least be aware.
Yes.
Okay, well, one more roundup item today. Crypto anchors. Exfiltration resistant infrastructure.
Yes. Now, what the guy is getting at is, say you steal data and then you sit at home and you go through it at your leisure. What if we could make it so the data was useless without some hardware on the server that you stole it from? In other words, the decryption or whatever step you need to go through in order to make the data useful is from hardware that you cannot take. Right. So it is very interesting. And what happens under that scenario is the attackers stay in the system working on the data instead of stealing the data and then disappearing. Yeah. So I guess the idea is keeping them there, and you're more likely to find them or discourage the actual manipulation of the data or the decrypting of the data. His conclusion is, by designing your applications in a way that ensures sensitive data flows are crypto anchored to your data center, you are slowing attackers down, gathering better information on what data was exposed, and making attackers continuously risk detection by forcing them to operate on your turf. So...
yeah, I like that.
Yeah. This is a security lead at Docker, and he's from Square, formerly at Square. And he's a PhD, so maybe he knows what he's talking about.
Maybe he knows what he's talking about. It's certainly good ideas to think about, right? Like as we see, defense in depth, and the more steps you can take, the more resilient, the more difficult you can make things. Especially when we see so many breaches where it's like, oh yeah, they just they downloaded the tar off S3, and then they can do whatever they want with it.
And they
Here
got it
at least,
all.
there are limitations that they can't just grab it all and run. They need to at least work with some of it there. Hopefully that will make things easier to mitigate, easier to track, easier to hunt down and stop. So hopefully this sort of stuff continues and we see more of this discussion being had. Companies start adopting it because, there's only going to be more and more personal information, secure information that we want to keep, and more cloud services that get entrusted with it. So they need to make sure that their architecture is designed from the ground up to handle it.
Correct. I agree.
Huh.
And there's one last thing.
Oh.
Another item that we added in at the last second. Dragonfly BSD 5.0.
Yeah, that's right.
Was released yesterday. Now, basically, it's the first bootable release of HAMR 2, Dragonfly's next generation file system. The details of all the commits between 4.8 and 5 branches are in the commit messages over here, but the big ticket items are HAMR 2, IPFW updates, improved graphics support, and EFI setup, and now can support over 900,000 processes on a single machine.
Wow.
900,000 is an awful lot of processes.
Yeah, that is definitely true. Man, they're doing some awesome work there. I know like the IPFW rewrite, people are really excited for. It sounds like that's added a lot of performance. It's really great to see some of the graphics work. Like they've been really doing a great job of keeping up with the Linux stack. So the i915 driver has been brought up to match what's in Linux kernel 4.7.10. So Intel GPUs are supported up to the Kaby Lake generation. That's pretty modern.
Yeah. The reason they went with the 900,000 is because they only had a 6-digit PIN. We might as well make it work to 1 million. So we actually did get 900,000 processes running. And the load average was like 890,000.
Wow. Huh. That's crazy. But that's impressive.
Redonkulous.
That's redonkulous. You ever use Dragonfly?
I have not. I have T-shirts with Dragonfly on it.
Well, maybe this is the release for you to try.
Maybe I should.
Excellent. Yeah. Perfect. Well, and if anyone else out there is excited for it or has tried it or has thoughts, reflections on HAMR 2, I know I've certainly followed some of the development of HAMR 2 for a while and been interested in it. So now that it's out in a more easy to use release and things keep improving, go check it out. Let us know what you think. I'm sure certainly curious.
They're doing a lot of very interesting things.
Yeah, definitely. And performance oriented, and it just seems like it's really shaping up as a nice modern operating system. Awesome. Well, that's a great last roundup item. We get to leave the show on a positive note. That's it for the TechSNAP program today. This has been episode 341. Thank you very much for joining us. If you want to see more, JupiterBroadcasting.com. There's the archives of this show, the past generation, and a whole bunch of other great shows for you to check out. You can join us here live there. There's the calendar, there's the live stream page, it's an IRC and a Discord and all kinds of ways. You can go to techsnap.reddit.com, and you can find us both on Twitter. I'm at Wes Payne. He is at TechSnap_Dan. That's it for the show. Come back next week. Keep watching TechSnap. We love that you're our audience. Thank you for joining us. See you, Dan.